Hi, folks. You know that old saying, think before you speak? Well, it appears that many prominent Democrats don't care about that. They don't care about history, and they don't care about your inherent rights. Mere hours after 11 people were gunned down in a synagogue in Pittsburg, Pennsylvania, many prominent collectivists used the tragedy to call for further attenuation to the right to keep and bear arms. First among them, the great Connecticut Senator, Democrat Richard Blumenthal, who evidently took some time off from trying to convince people that he served heroically in Vietnam when he did not, to tweet this, quote, "Congress is complicit by its inaction in this loathsome epidemic of gun violence," end quote. Which brings to mind two things, Mr. Blumenthal. First of all, you don't understand the definition of epidemic. It's from Greek and Latin, from epidemos, upon man, and it's supposed to pertain to medical maladies that men can't control. They happen to have to fight against things like germs and diseases. They don't have to do with people actually making choices like deciding to kill people. But hey, that's okay. We'll move on to the other part of it, which is that you think there is somehow an epidemic of gun violence, which, if you look at the statistics, you'll find is wrong, Mr. Blumenthal. In fact, not only is it wrong, it's wrong during a period when Americans have been possessing firearms in greater and greater numbers, Mr. Blumenthal. But that's okay. I'm sure many of your supporters in Connecticut won't care about the facts. Next up, we have the wonderful and fantastic Florida Democrat Senator Bill Nelson, who tweeted this, quote, "When will opponents of common sense gun safety work with us? We need to get assault weapons off the streets and out of the hands of those who would do us harm," end quote. Which assumes A, that prohibition works, and of course we know that it doesn't, especially when people are already interested in breaking the laws. They don't care about further laws. And B, it assumes that he and other politicians know and can dictate to everyone else what so-called common sense is, as they use such slippery language to phase in further statutes that will infringe on your inherent right to defend yourself with a firearm. But perhaps the capper came from Hawaii Democrat Senator Brian Schatz, who tweeted this little gem, quote, "I don't want to arm synagogues and churches and schools. I want to live in a society where Nazism and white supremacy crawls back in a hole, and we have universal background checks." Wow. In addition to the sloppy grammar and the fact that he seemed to not be aware that the alleged killer was already licensed, this is amazing to think. To think that this man could mention Nazis and then say he doesn't want to arm synagogues? Mr. Schatz, the Nazis disarmed the Jews before attempting to exterminate them. Perhaps you'd like to speak to some of those descended from the people who survived the Warsaw Ghetto and survived the uprising. Perhaps you'd like to speak to some of the descendants of people like the folks who lived in Belarus, who fought in the Bielski movement. They were the Bielski Jews who lived in the forest for 2 years and held on to their firearms in order to survive and fight the Nazis, Senator. But evidently that history is unimportant to a person like you. Evidently, you don't want to allow for Jews to be able to defend themselves in their synagogues. Why don't you leave it up to individuals, sir, and not dictate to them? Perhaps political dictates about the right to keep and bear arms have been shown to be big mistakes. Just a few thoughts as people start to get some information about what happened that day in Pittsburgh. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that little bell if you're watching on YouTube, because that will inform you about new videos. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.